Think about all the illegal money sloshing around the world.
Hmm.
You know, drug money, fraud, cybercrime proceeds. Where does it actually go first? It can't just, like, magically become clean cash, can it?
No, exactly. And that initial step, how that dirty money first gets its foot in the door of the legitimate financial system.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we're digging into today. It's called the placement phase.
Placement, right.
And it's honestly a pretty high-stakes part of the whole money laundering cycle.
Okay, placement. So we're talking about taking the profits from, I don't know, corruption, tax evasion, whatever the crime, and figuring out how to slip it into a bank account or maybe an investment, somewhere legitimate.
That's the core idea.
So our mission for this deep dive, and we're looking at this great piece from FinCrime Intelligence here, is to really get under the hood of that first stage. You know, what are the methods? Sometimes pretty ingenious, I suppose, but always risky.
Absolutely. And this FinCrime Intelligence article, it really lays it out well. Placement is definitively step one. It's where money from those predicate crimes, that's the term for the underlying illegal acts, first touches the legitimate world.
It really sounds like where they'd be most, I guess, exposed. You know, they're holding actual cash, potentially tons of it, or assets directly tied to the crime. Getting that into the system without setting off alarms must be a real challenge.
Oh, it's widely seen as the riskiest phase, definitely. Just the sheer amount of money involved often makes it incredibly hard to be discreet.
Right.
The basic problem for them is, how do you physically deposit or move this stuff without tripping wires, either with law enforcement or increasingly these sophisticated anti-money laundering, AML systems banks use?
So it's a strategic game from the get-go.
It really is. A lot of thought goes into trying to beat that initial barrier.
Okay, so let's talk strategy. How do they actually do it? What are the common tricks, the techniques they use to try and, well, launder that initial placement?
Well, the article outlines a few key ones. A really common method is structuring. You might have heard it called smurfing.
Smurfing, yeah. Sounds a bit cartoonish, but I assume it's serious.
Oh, very. It's where they take a large amount of cash and break it down into lots of smaller deposits. The whole point is to stay below the radar, specifically under the amount that automatically triggers a report. Like in the U.S., that's often transactions under $10,000.
Okay. So instead of one big deposit that screams, "Look at me," it's maybe 5, 6, 7 smaller ones? Like $9,500 each time.
Exactly. Spread across different branches, maybe different accounts, different days even. It's designed to get lost in the noise of everyday transactions.
Seems like a lot of work managing all those small deposits.
It is, but if the sums are large enough, they find ways, often using multiple people. Then there's the use of cash-intensive businesses.
Right, like businesses that genuinely handle a lot of cash anyway.
Precisely. Think restaurants, bars, casinos are a classic example. Car washes, convenience stores. They can commingle the dirty money with their legitimate daily takings.
So the illegal cash just gets mixed in with the real revenue.
It makes it much harder to pinpoint the illicit source. It just looks like a busy Tuesday at the restaurant.
Clever. Deceptive, obviously, but clever. What else does the FinCrime Intelligence piece mention?
Well, there's currency smuggling. This is more, let's say, physical. Literally moving bulk cash across borders.
Like suitcases full of money. Does that actually still happen?
It absolutely does. The goal is usually to deposit it in a country or jurisdiction where the financial controls, the AML checks, might be a bit weaker or perceived to be weaker. It carries huge physical risks, of course.
I bet. Getting caught with that much cash. Okay, what else?
Trade-based money laundering. This one's more complex, often involving international business.
How does that work?
Basically, manipulating invoices for imports and exports. You could say, over-invoice goods you're exporting to justify receiving more money than the goods are worth, effectively moving illicit funds in. Or under-invoice imports to send money out.
So you're moving value by misrepresenting the price of actual goods being traded.
Exactly. It disguises the money movement as legitimate international trade. Then, you mentioned casinos earlier.
Yeah, how do they fit in?
Well, it's another way to change the form of the money. You take cash, buy a load of casino chips, gamble a little bit, often minimally, and then cash the chips back out.
And it comes out as winnings.
Supposedly, yes. It creates a seemingly legitimate source for the funds, like you just got lucky at the roulette table.
Creates a paper trail, a false one.
Yeah.
Okay. And the last one mentioned was prepaid cards.
Yeah, prepaid cards and vouchers. This is a growing area. Loading cash onto gift cards, prepaid debit cards, even some digital wallets.
Why do that?
It converts bulky, risky cash into a much more portable, less suspicious format. easier to spend, easier to move, sometimes across borders digitally, without needing a bank right away for that first step.
Got it. Turns a pile of notes into plastic.
Oh.
Okay, so that's how they try to do it. But how do banks and financial institutions actually spot this? What are the red flags they're trained to look for?
They're definitely on the lookout. The article points to several key indicators. One big one is just unusually large cash deposits that seem out of character for the customer.
Like if my account suddenly gets a $50,000 cash deposit and I normally just have my salary going in.
Exactly. Or if a small business suddenly starts depositing huge amounts of cash that don't really match their stated business activity.
Makes sense. But what about structuring, where the amounts are small?
That's where pattern analysis comes in. They look for things like multiple cash deposits on the same day, or close together, but maybe at different branches, or spread across several accounts linked to the same person or entity.
Trying to piece together the smaller bits into a bigger picture.
Precisely. Another flag is deposits quickly followed by withdrawals, or especially wire transfers out of the country. It suggests the account is just being used as a pass-through.
Just washing the cash quickly and moving it on.
hmm Also, things like being cagey about providing ID or documentation for deposits, or using other people, third parties, or intermediaries to make the deposits instead of the actual account holder.
Right, if someone else is always doing your banking for you, especially with cash, that looks suspicious. And you mentioned advanced AML systems earlier. How do they help?
They're crucial. These aren't just simple rule-based checks anymore. We're talking sophisticated transaction monitoring software that analyzes vast amounts of data for anomalies.
Okay.
They use customer risk profiling, figuring out the expected activity for each customer, and behavioral analytics. These systems can spot subtle deviations from normal patterns in real time, things a human analyst might miss.
So it's technology trying to keep up with the criminals' methods, but there must be laws about this stuff, right? Regulations.
Oh, absolutely. There's a whole global framework. Internationally, you have the Financial Action Task Force, the FATF, which sets standards.
FATF.
Then regionally, like the EU anti-money laundering directives. And domestically, for example, in the U.S., you've got FinCEN, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, and the Bank Secrecy Act, the BSA, along with its AML regulations. These all essentially require financial institutions to be vigilant about placement.
So it's not optional, it's the law. What specific things do these regulations make banks do?
Key compliance actions include customer due diligence, often called CDD. That means really knowing your customer, who they are, their business, and importantly, the source of their funds and wealth. What kind of transactions should you expect to see?
So establishing a baseline.
Exactly. Then there's currency transaction reporting, or CTRs. In the U.S., for instance, cash transactions over $10,000 have to be reported via a CTR.
That's the threshold structuring tries to avoid.
Correct. And crucially, suspicious activity reports, or SARs. If a bank sees transactions that raise red flags, like the placement indicators we talked about, and there's no obvious legitimate reason, they must file a SAR with the authorities.
And if they don't, if they miss this stuff or turn a blind eye,
The consequences can be severe. We're talking massive fines, potentially criminal charges against the institution and individuals, and huge reputational damage. Being known as a bank that facilitates money laundering is, well, pretty much catastrophic.
yeah, you wouldn't want that reputation. So looping back then, why is nailing this placement stage so incredibly important? Why focus so much energy on stopping the money right at the very beginning?
Because, as the article really emphasizes, it is the beginning. It's the gateway. If you can effectively block or detect the money at this placement stage, you stop it from getting further into the system.
Before it gets mixed up and hidden.
Exactly. Once it's placed, it moves into the next stages layering, where they try to obscure the trail through complex transactions and integration, where it reappears as seemingly legitimate wealth. Those stages make tracing the money back to the crime exponentially harder.
So catching it in placement is like preventing the infection before it spreads through the whole body.
That's a great analogy. Early detection and disruption here are, frankly, the most effective weapons we have in the fight against money laundering. And it requires real collaboration, banks, law enforcement, regulators sharing information, constantly refining those monitoring tools.
Okay, so let's recap quickly placement. That's step one, getting the dirty money into the system. They use methods like structuring, cash-heavy businesses, smuggling, trade manipulation, casinos, prepaid cards, lots of tricks.
Right, often risky tricks.
And financial institutions are looking for red flags, weird deposits, odd patterns, structuring attempts using technology and due diligence. Getting this stage right is critical because it stops the laundering process before it really gets going.
Perfectly put. Understanding placement really gives you insight into the whole challenge of financial crime, this constant back and forth between the criminals and the systems trying to stop them.
It really does. And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? With criminals always finding new ways, new technologies, how do we actually stay ahead? How does the financial system adapt fast enough to counter these constantly evolving placement techniques? That's a huge ongoing question for everyone involved, regulators, banks, and ultimately for society.